Paris, 1925. A scream shatters the night, and Claire Dubois, a radiant singer, lies dead, her throat slashed, a locket in her hand, a lone pearl earring beside her. Enter Hercule Poirot, the master detective, unraveling a web of secrets in the sultry shadows of Le Chat Noir cabaret. A jealous proprietress, a lovesick painter, a charming playwright, a terrified chorus girl, and a sinister gambler, each hides a motive. As clues, red wax, a brass key, a charred letter. Unfold, Poirot's little gray cells expose a shocking truth. A friend's betrayal, driven by love and fear, sealed Claire's fate. Can you solve the mystery before the curtain falls? Chapter 1. The Midnight Cry. The fog draped itself over Paris like a velvet shroud, softening the sharp edges of the city's grandeur. It was late, nearing midnight, and the Rue de Rivoli lay hushed, its shop fronts shuttered, its street lamps casting pools of amber light that struggled against the mist. Hercule Poirot, impeccable in his overcoat and Homburg hat, walked with measured steps, his silver-tipped cane tapping a precise rhythm on the cobblestones. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of chestnuts from a distant vendor's cart. He had arrived in Paris only that morning, at the insistence of his old friend Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud of the Sûreté, who promised a week of fine dining and finer conversation. Yet, as Poirot knew too well, fate rarely permitted such indulgences without interruption. A sudden scream pierced the night, a woman's cry, high and desperate, slicing through the fog from a narrow alley to his left. It was not the playful shriek of a reveler, but a sound of raw terror, abrupt and final. Poirot's mustache quivered, a telltale sign of his heightened senses. Without hesitation, he turned toward the sound, his small, polished shoes clicking swiftly against the wet stone. The alley, barely wide enough for two to walk abreast, was cloaked in shadow, save for a single gaslight flickering like a weary sentinel. Beneath it, sprawled across the damp cobblestones, lay a woman. She was young, no older than 30, her face pale and delicate, framed by dark curls that spilled from a loosened chignon. Her dress, a vivid crimson silk, fanned around her like a pool of blood, its hem muddied by the alley's grime. A deep gash marred her throat, the wound stark against her alabaster skin, and her eyes, wide and glassy, stared into eternity. Beside her head, glinting in the gaslight, lay a single pearl earring, its luster incongruous amid the scene's brutality. Its twin was nowhere to be seen. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his voice low, almost reverent. He knelt beside the body, careful not to disturb the scene, his gloved hands hovering as his keen eyes catalogued every detail. The woman's right hand clutched a gold locket, its chain tangled in her fingers, as if she had grasped it in her final moments. A faint perfume lingered, jasmine perhaps, mingled with the metallic tang of blood. Poirot's gaze swept the alley. No footprints in the damp, no discarded weapon, only the oppressive silence of a city holding its breath. Footsteps echoed behind him, heavy and purposeful. Inspector Giraud appeared, his broad shoulders filling the alley's mouth, his face set in a scowl that deepened as he took in the scene. Two uniformed gendarmes followed, their lanterns casting jagged shadows. "Poirot!" Giraud exclaimed, his voice a mix of exasperation and grim familiarity. "You find trouble even on a holiday. What have we here?" Poirot rose, brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve. "We have, my friend, a tragedy and a puzzle." He gestured to the body. "This is no random act. The precision of the wound, the locket, the earring, these are clues, not accidents. Giraud crouched beside the woman, his expression softening for a moment. Mademoiselle Claire Dubois, he said, recognizing her. A singer at Le Chat Noir, known for her voice and beauty, and I fear for her entanglements. She was no stranger to whispers. Poirot's gray eyes gleamed with interest. Entanglements, you say? Then we must learn who shared her stage and her secrets. This locket, Giraud. What does it tell us? Giraud gently pried the locket from Claire's fingers, revealing an engraving. The initials A.V. He frowned. André Vasseur, perhaps, the playwright. There were rumors they were close. Poirot's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. Rumors are but shadows, Giraud. We seek the light of truth. And this earring, why one and not two? A struggle? A message? He straightened, his small frame radiating authority. Secure the alley, mon ami. Let no one touch this scene until we have examined every thread of this tapestry. Giraud nodded, barking orders to his men. As they cordoned off the alley, Poirot took a final look at Claire Dubois, her beauty frozen in death. The fog seemed to thicken, as if conspiring to hide the truth. But Hercule Poirot, with his little gray cells, was not so easily deterred. The game, as he often called it, had begun. Chapter 2. The Players Assemble. The morning sun pierced the fog that had cloaked Paris, bathing the city in a pale, golden light that did little to warm the chill in Hercule Poirot's heart. He sat in Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud's office at the Préfecture de Police, a austere room with high ceilings and walls lined with maps of the city's arrondissements. The desk between them was strewn with papers, a photograph of Claire Dubois' lifeless face staring up from the clutter. Poirot sipped his coffee, served in a chipped porcelain cup that offended his sense of order, and listened as Giraud recounted the sparse facts of the case. His mustache, meticulously waxed, twitched with each new detail, his mind already weaving the threads of the mystery. Mademoiselle Claire Dubois, Giraud began, his voice heavy with the weight of a long night, was last seen leaving Le Chat Noir at 11 o'clock. She performed her usual set, chansons that had the audience enraptured, they say. She declined company and walked into the night alone. An hour later, you found her in that alley, her throat cut, clutching that locket with the initials A.V. No witnesses, no weapon, only that single pearl earring beside her. Poirot set his cup down with a delicate clink, his green eyes narrowing. And yet, Giraud, the absence of evidence is itself a clue. The locket, the earring, these are deliberate, non? We must ask, who wished her dead, and why leave such tokens? The initials A.V. They point us somewhere, but not necessarily to the truth. Giraud leaned back, rubbing his temples. You and your riddles, Poirot. We have suspects, at least. André Vasseur, the playwright, is the obvious start. Those initials match, and gossip linked him to Claire romantically. He claims he was at home, writing, but no one can confirm it. Then there's Madame Elise Renard, who runs Le Chat Noir. She's a sharp one, resented Claire's hold over the patrons, thought she stole the spotlight. Next, Pierre Lefebvre, a painter, half mad with obsession for Claire. Witnesses saw them arguing outside the cabaret 2 nights ago. And finally, Sophie Martin, a chorus girl and Claire's closest friend, though she's been cagey, dodging my questions. Poirot's fingers steepled beneath his chin, his expression one of serene concentration. A cast of characters, each with a motive, yet none with a face of innocence. The heart, Giraud, It betrays itself in small ways. We must observe them, question them, and let the little gray cells discern the truth. I propose we begin at Le Chat Noir, where Claire's final hours unfolded. Giraud nodded, grabbing his coat. You'll find it a different place by day, Poirot. Less glamour, more shadows. The cabaret, nestled in a bustling corner of Montmartre, was indeed transformed in the daylight. Gone were the flickering candles and raucous laughter. The room now felt hollow, its red velvet curtains sagging like weary sentinels. The air smelled of stale wine and forgotten perfume. Madame Elise Renard greeted them at the entrance, her figure stout and commanding, her eyes like flints. She wore a severe black dress, as if already in mourning, though Poirot noted the absence of genuine grief in her demeanor. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice clipped. "Inspector Giraud. I expected you sooner. The police have been sniffing around since dawn, upsetting my staff." Poirot inclined his head, his politeness masking his scrutiny. "Madame, a tragedy such as this demands our attention. Mademoiselle Dubois was your star, was she not? Her loss must wound you deeply." Renard's lips tightened. "She was talented, yes, but trouble followed her like a stray dog, always flirting with the patrons, stirring jealousy, making demands. She thought herself above the rest of us." Poirot's gaze was unyielding. "And you, madame, did you resent this star who outshone your establishment?" Her cheeks flushed, but she held his stare. "Resent? I run a business, monsieur. Claire brought crowds, and crowds bring money, but she also brought chaos. Ask Sophie Martin. She'll tell you how Claire toyed with men's hearts." At the mention of Sophie, a slight figure emerged from the wings of the stage. Sophie Martin, no more than 20, had the fragile beauty of a porcelain doll, her blonde curls pinned haphazardly, her hands twisting a pair of worn gloves. Her eyes, red-rimmed, darted nervously between Poirot and Giraud. "Mademoiselle Martin," Poirot said, his tone gentle yet probing. "You were Claire's friend, oui? What can you tell us of her final evening?" Sophie's voice trembled. She was herself, singing, laughing, charming everyone. But she was distracted. She mentioned a man, not André, someone else. She said he frightened her, that he had a hold over her. Poirot leaned closer, his voice soft as velvet. "His name, mademoiselle?" She shook her head, tears brimming. She wouldn't say. Only that she was meeting him after her performance. I begged her not to go alone, but she laughed it off. Giraud scribbled in his notebook, but Poirot's attention lingered on Sophie's hands, which clutched her gloves as if they were a lifeline. He noted a faint smudge of red on her cuff, lipstick perhaps, or something more sinister. He filed the observation away, his mind a ledger of such details. As they questioned the staff, Poirot's eyes roamed the cabaret. The tables were cluttered with last night's debris, empty glasses, cigarette stubs, a discarded fan. Near the stage, half hidden beneath a chair, he spotted a crumpled program from Claire's performance. He retrieved it with a flick of his handkerchief, noting a smear of red wax on its edge, like a seal. It was an odd detail, one that whispered of carelessness or intent. He slipped it into his pocket, unnoticed by Giraud. "Madame Renard," Poirot said, turning back to the proprietress. "Who else was here last night? Patrons? Performers? Anyone who might have seen Claire leave?" Renard shrugged. "The usual crowd, artists, writers, the occasional aristocrat slumming it. Pierre Lefebvre was here, mooning over Claire as always. André Vasseur came late, stayed for her final song, then left. I didn't see where he went. And you, madame? Where were you when Claire left? Her eyes flashed. In my office, balancing the books. I don't hover over my girls like a nursemaid. Poirot nodded, his smile enigmatic. Of course. Yet the books of human nature, they are never so neatly balanced, are they? As they left Le Chat Noir, Giraud muttered, Renard's hiding something, and Sophie's scared out of her wits, but we've no proof against either. Poirot's cane tapped the pavement rhythmically. Proof, Giraud, is like a fine wine. It requires time to mature. We have met our players, and each has a role in this drama. The locket, the earring, the wax on the program. These are the props. Now, we must discover the script. They stepped into the Paris morning, the city awakening around them. Carriages rattled by, vendors called out, and somewhere Poirot knew the truth lay hidden, waiting for his little gray cells to uncover it. The stage was set, and the next act awaited. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Cabaret. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Montmartre as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Giraud approached Le Chat Noir once more. The cabaret, so subdued in the morning's light, now hummed with the restless energy of Paris's bohemian heart. Gaslights flickered to life, their glow catching the gilt edges of posters plastered on the walls, each proclaiming the allure of Claire Dubois and her fellow performers. The air was thick with the scent of absinthe and anticipation, a stark contrast to the grim purpose of their visit. Poirot, his Homburg hat tilted precisely, stepped inside with the air of a man entering a chessboard, each move calculated, each glance a gambit. The interior was a kaleidoscope of crimson and gold, the stage draped in heavy curtains that whispered of secrets. Patrons, a mix of artists, poets, and thrill-seekers, filled the tables, their laughter tinged with the nervous edge of a city gripped by murder. Poirot's eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned the room, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the fleeting glances that betrayed unease. Giraud at his side muttered, "They're all here, Poirot. The vultures circling Claire's fame, even in death." Madame Elise Renard stood behind the bar, her presence as formidable as a general's. She poured absinthe with practiced ease, her movements deliberate, her gaze sweeping the room like a lighthouse beam. When she saw Poirot and Giraud, her lips pursed, but she beckoned them over with a curt nod. "Monsieur Poirot, Inspector," she said, her voice low and edged with irritation. "Back so soon? My girls are shaken and the patrons are whispering. You'll ruin my business with your questions." Poirot's smile was disarming, yet his eyes held a glint of steel. "Madame, a woman is dead, and your cabaret was her final stage. Surely you wish to see justice done?" Renard's expression softened, but only slightly. "Justice, yes, but Claire, she was a flame that burned too bright. Men adored her, women envied her. She stirred passions, and passions breed trouble." "Indeed," Poirot mused, his fingers brushing the brim of his hat. "And whose passions burned hottest? You perhaps felt eclipsed by her light?" Her eyes flashed, but she held her composure. "I am no starry-eyed girl, monsieur. I built this place with my own hands. Claire was an asset, nothing more. If I resented anyone, it was those who fawned over her, neglecting my other performers." Poirot nodded, filing away her words. He turned his attention to the stage, where a young woman was rehearsing a dance, her movements graceful but mechanical. Sophie Martin stood in the wings, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly. Poirot approached her, his steps silent on the polished floor. "Mademoiselle Martin," he said softly, "you seem troubled. Last night you spoke of Claire's fear, of a man who held her in his grip. Can you recall anything more, a detail, however small?" Sophie's eyes darted to the crowd, then back to Poirot. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She was different that night, monsieur. Restless, like she was waiting for something, or someone. She kept touching her locket as if it were a talisman. She said she had to settle a debt, but not with money." Poirot's mustache twitched. "A debt, you say? And this man, did she describe him?" Sophie shook her head, her curls trembling. "Only that he was dangerous, someone with power. I thought it was André at first, but she laughed when I suggested it. She said, 'Not him, Sophie, someone colder.' Giraud, listening, jotted notes, but Poirot's mind was already racing. A debt not paid in money suggested blackmail, or perhaps a secret Claire held over someone, or someone held over her. He thanked Sophie, noting the tremor in her hands as she retreated to the shadows. As they moved through the cabaret, Poirot's gaze fell on a small table near the stage, cluttered with the remnants of the previous night's revelry. Among the debris, a spilled glass, a crumpled napkin, he spotted a small brass key, half hidden beneath a program. He retrieved it with his handkerchief, turning it over in the dim light. It was ornate, with a fleur-de-lis design, suggesting it belonged to something more personal than a cabaret prop. He pocketed it, his expression unreadable. Giraud, noticing, raised an eyebrow. "Another clue, Poirot? You collect them like a magpie." "Not a magpie, Giraud," Poirot replied, his voice calm. "A weaver, gathering threads to form the pattern. This key, it may unlock more than a door." Their attention was drawn to a commotion at the bar. Pierre Lefebvre, the painter, had entered, his coat streaked with paint, his eyes wild with a mix of grief and agitation. He was arguing with a waiter, his voice rising. "I need to see Elise. She knows. Claire was here. She saw her leave." Poirot approached, his demeanor soothing. "Monsieur Lefebvre, calm yourself. You were here last night, oui? You saw Mademoiselle Dubois?" Lefebvre's hands shook as he ran them through his disheveled hair. "I watched her sing. She was radiant, but she wouldn't speak to me. I waited outside, hoping to change her mind about posing for me again. She brushed past, said she had somewhere to be." "And you followed her?" Poirot's tone was gentle, but his eyes were piercing. Lefebvre hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I went home. I swear it." Poirot noted the painter's nervous gestures, the way his fingers twitched as if longing for a brush. "Your devotion to her was profound, monsieur. Such devotion can lead to extremes." Lefebvre's face flushed. "I loved her, but I didn't kill her." As Giraud questioned Lefebvre further, Poirot wandered to the edge of the stage, where a velvet curtain hung slightly askew. Behind it he found a small alcove, a space where performers might steal a moment's rest. On the floor, barely visible, was a single cigarette stub, its tip stained with a faint trace of red. Lipstick, perhaps, or the same wax he had found on the program. He added it to his collection of clues, his mind turning over the possibilities. As they prepared to leave, Poirot caught sight of André Vasseur entering the cabaret, his tailored coat immaculate, his face pale but composed. He nodded curtly to Giraud, but avoided Poirot's gaze. "Monsieur Vasseur," Poirot called. "A word, if you please." Vasseur approached reluctantly. "I've told the police everything. I was home, working on my play. I know nothing of Claire's death." "Yet you were here last night," Poirot said, his voice smooth. "You saw her perform, then left. Where did you go?" Vasseur's jaw tightened. "Home, as I said. Ask anyone." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I shall, monsieur. I shall." As they stepped into the evening air, Giraud sighed. "They're all lying or hiding something. Renard's too proud, Sophie's too scared, Lefebvre's too obsessed, and Vasseur's too smooth." Poirot adjusted his gloves, his eyes gleaming. "Lies, Giraud, are like shadows. They reveal the shape of the truth by their absence. We return tomorrow to shine a light." The cabaret's music followed them into the night, a haunting melody that seemed to mourn Claire Dubois, even as it concealed her killer's secrets. Chapter 4. The playwright's alibi. The Seine glittered under the late morning sun, its waters a restless mirror to the city's secrets. Hercule Poirot and Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud stood before the grand façade of André Vasseur's apartment building, its wrought iron balconies overlooking the river's gentle curve. The building exuded wealth, its stonework carved with flourishes that spoke of old money and new ambition. Poirot, his patent leather shoes gleaming, adjusted his tie with a fastidious flick, his mind already dissecting the man they had come to question. Vasseur, the playwright with the initials etched on Claire Dubois' locket, was a figure of intrigue. A man whose charm, Giraud had warned, masked a calculating nature. They ascended a marble staircase, the air cool and scented with beeswax polish. Vasseur's apartment on the top floor was a study in opulence. Velvet drapes framed tall windows. A crystal chandelier cast prisms across mahogany furniture, and a grand piano stood silent in one corner. Vasseur greeted them with a strained smile, his dark hair slicked back, his tailored suit impeccable, yet somehow at odds with the faint tremor in his hands. He gestured to a pair of leather armchairs, offering cognac, which Poirot declined with a polite wave. "Monsieur Vasseur," Poirot began, his voice smooth as the river outside. "You are aware, no doubt, of the tragedy that has befallen Mademoiselle Dubois. Her locket bore your initials, and you were seen at Le Chat Noir on the night of her death. Tell me, what was your connection to her?" Vasseur's eyes flickered, but he maintained his composure. "Claire was an inspiration. I wrote for her, you know, songs, scenes, even a play. We were close, yes, but not lovers, despite what the gossips say. I was at home that night, working on my latest manuscript." Poirot's gaze drifted to a desk littered with papers, a fountain pen lying askew beside a stack of manuscript pages. "Your work, monsieur, it consumes you, does it not? May I see this manuscript?" Vasseur hesitated, then nodded, retrieving a sheaf of papers. Poirot examined them, noting the ink's freshness, the handwriting's uneven loops, a contrast to the precision he expected from a man of Vasseur's reputation. "You wrote this on the night of the murder?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. "Yes," Vasseur replied, too quickly. "I was up until dawn, lost in the story." Poirot's fingers traced the edge of a page. "Curious, then, that the ink appears so fresh, as if applied only hours ago. And this tremor in the script, does your muse inspire such agitation?" Vasseur's face paled, his laugh forced. "The shock of Claire's death, Monsieur Poirot. It unsettles the hand, the heart." "Indeed," Poirot murmured, his eyes narrowing. He rose, pacing the room with the deliberate grace of a cat. Near the fireplace, he paused, noting a faint pile of ash in the grate. Kneeling, he sifted through it with a silver letter opener, uncovering a charred scrap of paper bearing a single word: Claire. He pocketed it discreetly, his expression unchanged. Giraud, less subtle, pressed Vasseur. "You claim you were here, alone. No one saw you leave Le Chat Noir? No one visited you?" Vasseur shook his head. "I live alone, Inspector. My work is my companion." Poirot turned, his green eyes piercing. "And yet, monsieur, you were at Le Chat Noir for Claire's final performance. You left before she did. Where did you go?" "Home," Vasseur insisted, his voice rising. "I took a cab, straight here. Ask the driver if you must." "We shall," Giraud said, jotting a note. "But cabbies can be mistaken, or paid to forget." Poirot's attention shifted to a small table by the window, where a crystal ashtray held a single cigarette stub, its tip unmarked by lipstick or wax, a contrast to the one he had found at the cabaret. He filed this away, his mind turning over the inconsistencies. Vasseur's alibi was too neat, too solitary, and the ash in the fireplace suggested secrets burned away. As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused at the door, his cane tapping lightly. "Monsieur Vasseur, a final question. The locket Claire held. Why your initials, if your connection was merely professional?" Vasseur's jaw tightened. "She admired my work. I gave her the locket as a token of appreciation, nothing more." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Tokens, monsieur, often carry weight beyond their size. We shall speak again." Outside, the Seine flowed on, indifferent to the drama unfolding along its banks. Giraud lit a cigarette, exhaling with frustration. "He's slippery, Poirot. That alibi's as solid as fog, but we've no proof he was in that alley." Poirot adjusted his gloves, his gaze distant. "Proof, Giraud, is in the details. The ash, the ink, the locket. Vasseur hides something, but whether it is murder or merely shame, we shall see. Let us next visit Monsieur Lefebvre, the painter. His passion for Claire may reveal more than he intends." They hailed a carriage, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones, a counterpoint to Poirot's racing thoughts. The playwright's apartment, with its polished surfaces and hidden ashes, was a stage set for deception. The little gray cells, as Poirot called them, were already at work, piecing together the fragments of a truth that lay just beyond the curtain. Chapter 5. The Painter's Obsession. The narrow streets of Montmartre wound like a labyrinth, their cobblestones slick with the residue of a morning drizzle. Hercule Poirot and Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud navigated the maze, their destination a crumbling atelier tucked above a bakery, its air heavy with the scent of fresh bread and turpentine. Pierre Lefebvre's studio, home to the painter whose obsession with Claire Dubois had been whispered about in every café, promised answers, or, at the very least, more questions. Poirot, his overcoat pristine despite the damp, climbed the rickety stairs with a measured grace, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Giraud, trailing behind, muttered about the impracticality of artists and their garrets. The studio door creaked open, revealing a chaos of creativity. Canvases leaned against every wall, some vibrant with color, others half-finished, their subjects obscured by slashes of paint. Easels stood like sentinels, and the floor was littered with brushes, rags, and jars of pigment. In the center, Pierre Lefebvre hunched over a canvas, his shirt stained with streaks of ochre and crimson. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot, as if sleep had long abandoned him. At their entrance, he started, nearly upsetting a jar of turpentine. "Monsieur Lefebvre," Poirot said, his voice calm yet commanding. "We meet again. You will forgive the intrusion, but the matter of Mademoiselle Dubois' death demands our attention." Lefebvre's brush froze mid-stroke, his gaze darting between Poirot and Giraud. "I've told you everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't kill her. I loved her." Poirot's mustache twitched, a subtle sign of his scrutiny. "Love, monsieur, is a powerful force, but it can twist into something darker. You argued with Mademoiselle Dubois 2 nights before her death, did you not? She refused to pose for you, and this refusal, how it wounded you." Lefebvre's hands trembled, smearing paint across his knuckles. "She was my muse," he said, gesturing to a canvas behind him. It depicted Claire, her face luminous yet haunted, her crimson dress vivid against a shadowed background. "She stopped sitting for me, said I was too intense, but I never harmed her. I only wanted to capture her." Poirot stepped closer, his eyes tracing the painting's lines. The brush strokes were feverish, almost violent, yet the portrait captured a vulnerability in Claire that was absent in her public persona. "This intensity, monsieur," Poirot said, "it is evident in your work. But tell me, where were you when she left Le Chat Noir on the night of her murder?" "Home," Lefebvre said, too quickly. "I left after her performance. I was drunk, upset. I came here and painted until morning." Giraud snorted, crossing his arms. "Alone, of course. No one to vouch for you, just like Vasseur." Poirot's gaze swept the room, landing on a cluttered table near the window. Among the brushes and rags lay a knife, its blade crusted with red. He approached, lifting it with his handkerchief. "This, monsieur, paint or something else?" Lefebvre's eyes widened. "Paint. It's just paint. I use it to scrape canvases." Poirot examined the blade, noting the texture of the red residue. It flaked like paint, but he pocketed it nonetheless, his expression unreadable. "A curious tool for an artist," he remarked. "And this?" He bent to retrieve a small object half hidden beneath a rag. A single pearl earring, its luster identical to the one found beside Claire's body. "You kept a memento of her, perhaps?" Lefebvre's face drained of color. "She left it here, months ago, when she posed for me. I kept it as inspiration. It means nothing." "Nothing." Poirot's voice was soft, but his eyes were sharp as a blade. "Yet it matches the earring found at the scene of her murder. A coincidence or a connection?" Lefebvre staggered back, his hands raised. "I swear, I didn't follow her that night. I was here alone." Giraud stepped forward, his tone gruff. "You were seen arguing with her, Lefebvre. You were obsessed, spurned. Men have killed for less." Poirot raised a hand, silencing Giraud. "Let us not leap to conclusions, mon ami. Monsieur Lefebvre, you say you painted that night. Show me this work." Lefebvre hesitated, then pointed to a canvas in the corner, covered with a cloth. He pulled it aside, revealing a chaotic scene. A woman's silhouette, her throat a slash of crimson, set against a dark alley. The painting was raw, unfinished, but its subject was unmistakable. "You painted her death?" Giraud exclaimed, his hand inching toward his notebook. "Not her death," Lefebvre cried. "It's imagination, grief. I heard about her murder the next morning and started this. It's how I process." Poirot studied the canvas, his mind cataloging every stroke. The alley's perspective was precise, the gaslight's glow eerily accurate. "A vivid imagination, monsieur," he said, his tone neutral. "Or perhaps a memory?" Lefebvre's protests grew frantic, but Poirot turned his attention to the room's details. A small stove in the corner held ashes, not unlike those in Vasseur's fireplace, though these were flecked with bits of colored paper, perhaps sketches or letters. He also noted a crumpled scarf on a chair, embroidered with the initials CD, Claire's no doubt. Each item was a thread in the tapestry of the case, and Poirot's little gray cells were weaving them together. As they prepared to leave, Poirot paused at the door, his cane tapping lightly. "Monsieur Lefebvre, your passion for Mademoiselle Dubois is evident, but passion can blind as well as inspire. If you conceal anything, it will not remain hidden from Hercule Poirot." Outside, the Montmartre air was sharp, the bakery's warmth a fleeting comfort. Giraud lit a cigarette, his frustration palpable. "He's a wreck, Poirot, but is he a killer? That painting, that earring, it's damning, yet it feels too obvious." Poirot adjusted his hat, his eyes gleaming. "The obvious, Giraud, is often a mask for the subtle. Lefebvre's obsession is real. But is it murderous? The knife, the earring, the scarf, they speak, but not yet clearly. We must next explore this debt Sophie mentioned, the man who frightened Claire. Let us seek out Lucien Moreau, the gambler. His shadow looms large." They descended the stairs, the city's pulse quickening around them. Lefebvre's studio, with its fevered paintings and hidden relics, was a canvas of emotion, but whether it depicted guilt or merely torment, Poirot could not yet say. The truth, he knew, lay in the spaces between the clues, waiting for his meticulous mind to illuminate it. Chapter 6. The Locket's Secret. The Paris evening unfurled like a dark velvet curtain, the city's lights twinkling against the gathering dusk. Hercule Poirot and Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud ventured into the underbelly of the Marais, where the streets grew narrower and the air carried a tang of danger. Their destination was La Rose Noire, a gambling den notorious for its clientele of rogues and risk-takers. Lucien Moreau, a man whose name had surfaced in whispers about Claire Dubois's mysterious debt, was said to hold court there. Poirot, his overcoat buttoned against the chill, walked with the calm assurance of a man who trusted his intellect above all else. Giraud, by contrast, kept a hand near his revolver, his eyes scanning the shadows. The den was a cavern of smoke and secrets, its low ceiling stained with years of cigar fumes. Card tables crowded the room, their green felt surfaces littered with chips and spilled drinks. Laughter and curses mingled with the clink of glasses, creating a cacophony that grated on Poirot's refined sensibilities. At the far end, Lucien Moreau sat like a spider in his web, his lean frame draped in a tailored suit, a scar slicing across his left cheek like a warning. His eyes, cold and calculating, met Poirot's with a flicker of amusement. "Monsieur Poirot," Moreau said, his voice smooth as oiled silk, "and Inspector Giraud, to what do I owe this unexpected honor?" Poirot inclined his head, his mustache immaculate despite the smoky air. "Monsieur Moreau, we seek answers regarding Mademoiselle Claire Dubois. Her death, I believe, is not unconnected to you." Moreau's smile was a thin blade. "Claire? A pity, her passing. She was a lively one, always drawing eyes. But I'm no killer, monsieur. I deal in cards, not knives." Giraud leaned forward, his tone gruff. "She owed you money, Moreau. Debts like that get people killed. Where were you when she died?" Moreau spread his hands, revealing manicured nails. "Here, Surrounded by witnesses. Ask anyone. My table was full until dawn. As for Claire's debt, she paid it last week, in full. I had no reason to harm her. Poirot's green eyes gleamed, unblinking. A debt paid, you say? Yet Sophie Martin tells us Claire feared a man, someone with power. And this locket... He produced the gold locket from his pocket, its initials A.V., catching the dim light. It was found in her hand. A curious detail, non, for a woman who feared you? Moreau's gaze flickered to the locket, a shadow crossing his face. That trinket? Nothing to do with me. If it's André Vasseur's initials, ask him. He's the one who trailed her like a love-sick pup. Poirot's fingers traced the locket's edge, his mind turning. He opened it, revealing the tiny photograph. Inside, a man, not Vasseur, but someone with Moreau's sharp features and scarred cheek. And this, monsieur? Is this not your likeness? The room seemed to still, the gambler's chatter fading as Moreau's composure wavered. A coincidence, he said, his voice tighter. She must have kept it for sentiment. Sentiment? Poirot's tone was deceptively mild. Or evidence. Claire perhaps knew something you wished to keep hidden. A smuggling ring, perhaps. Her debt was not merely financial, was it? Moreau's hand twitched toward his pocket, but he caught himself, forcing a laugh. You weave tales, Monsieur Poirot. I'm a gambler, not a smuggler. Claire was a singer, nothing more. If she had secrets, they died with her. Giraud's eyes narrowed. We'll search your rooms, Moreau. If there's anything to find... You'll need a warrant, Moreau cut in, his smile returning. And good luck getting one. My friends in high places don't take kindly to fishing expeditions. As they spoke, Poirot's gaze wandered, catching a figure in the shadows near the door. Sophie Martin, her face half hidden by a scarf, watched the exchange with wide, fearful eyes. She slipped out before Poirot could approach, her departure as silent as a ghost's. He made a mental note, his suspicions deepening. Leaving the den, Poirot and Giraud stepped into the cool night air. Giraud lit a cigarette, his frustration palpable. He's lying through his teeth, Poirot. That photograph, it's him, no question. But he's right about the warrant. His connections run deep. Poirot adjusted his gloves, his expression serene yet resolute. Connections, Giraud, are like cards. They can be played, or they can be trumped. The locket, the photograph, Sophie's fear. These are pieces of a puzzle. Moreau is involved, but is he the hand that struck? We must return to Le Chat Noir and observe our players once more. The truth hides in their glances, their silences. They hailed a carriage, the clatter of hooves echoing through the Marais. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details. The locket's photograph, Sophie's furtive presence, Moreau's guarded confidence. Each clue was a thread, and the tapestry of Claire Dubois's murder was beginning to take shape, its pattern still obscured, but growing clearer with every step. Chapter 7. The final thread, the evening air hung heavy with the scent of rain, as Hercule Poirot and Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud returned to Le Chat Noir. The cabaret, usually alive with music and laughter, was tonight a somber stage, its velvet curtains drawn tight, its tables arranged in a semicircle as if for a tribunal. Poirot had requested the gathering, insisting that all those touched by Claire Dubois' life and death be present. The gaslights cast long shadows, flickering like the doubts in the minds of the assembled suspects. André Vasseur, Madame Élise Renard, Pierre Lefebvre, Sophie Martin, and reluctantly summoned Lucien Moreau. Each sat stiffly, their faces a mask of apprehension or defiance, as Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small frame commanding the space with quiet authority. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, "we are here to unravel the tragedy of Mademoiselle Claire Dubois, whose life ended in a dark alley, her hand clutching a locket, her side marked by a single pearl earring. This was no random act, but a crime woven with intent, its threads leading us to this moment." He paced slowly, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm on the polished floor. "Let us consider the clues. The locket, engraved with A.V., suggested Monsieur Vasseur, the playwright who claimed only admiration for Claire. Yet his alibi wavers. His fireplace holds ashes of secrets burned. Vasseur shifted, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. Poirot turned to Lefebvre, whose haunted eyes betrayed sleepless nights. "Monsieur Lefebvre, your passion for Claire was painted in every stroke of your brush. The earring in your studio, the knife with its red stain, these point to you, yet your torment seems genuine. Did you kill in a fit of rejection?" Lefebvre's hands clenched. "I loved her. I could never—" Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Madame Renard, your resentment of Claire's brilliance was no secret. You called her trouble, yet your cabaret thrived because of her. Did you seek to dim her light permanently?" Renard's eyes flashed. "I'm no murderer. She was trouble, but I needed her." Poirot's gaze settled on Lucien Moreau, who lounged with calculated ease, his scarred cheek a stark contrast to his polished demeanor. "Monsieur Moreau, Claire feared you, owed you a debt not of money but of knowledge. The photograph in her locket, your face, not Vasseur's. She knew of your smuggling, did she not? A secret worth killing for." Moreau's smile was icy. "You spin tales, Poirot. I had no quarrel with her. She paid her debts." Finally, Poirot turned to Sophie Martin, whose pale face seemed to shrink under his scrutiny. "Mademoiselle Martin, you were Claire's confidant, yet you tremble, your eyes flee from the truth. You spoke of her fear, yet you were there, in the shadows of La Rose Noire, watching Moreau. Why?" Sophie's hands twisted her gloves, her voice a whisper. I was scared for her." Poirot stopped pacing, his green eyes gleaming. "The truth, mes amis, is not in the grand gestures, but in the small details. The red wax on the program, the brass key, the cigarette stub. These are the threads that bind the killer. Let me weave them for you." He held up the crumpled program, its red wax smear catching the light. "This wax, found at Le Chat Noir, matches the seal on letters found in Sophie's lodgings, letters addressed to Lucien Moreau. The brass key, discovered near the stage, unlocks a private box at La Rose Noire, where Sophie met her lover, Moreau. The cigarette stub, with its trace of red, was not lipstick, but the same wax, dropped in haste." Sophie gasped, her eyes wide with panic. Poirot continued, relentless. "Claire discovered Moreau's smuggling ring, a secret that threatened his empire. She confided in you, Sophie, her dearest friend. But you, torn between loyalty to Claire and love for Moreau, chose betrayal. You followed her that night, saw her confront him in the alley. When she threatened to expose him, you acted, not he. You slashed her throat, planted the earring to implicate Lefebvre, and left the locket to mislead us to Vasseur." "No!" Sophie cried, tears streaming. "I loved her." "Love," Poirot said softly, "can be a poison. You feared Moreau's wrath if Claire spoke. You killed to protect him and yourself. He produced the second pearl earring, retrieved from Sophie's coat pocket during a discreet search arranged by Giraud. This, mademoiselle, completes the pair. Sophie collapsed, sobbing. I didn't mean to. She was going to ruin him, ruin us. I panicked. Moreau's face hardened, but he remained silent, his eyes cold. Giraud signaled his men, who moved to restrain Sophie. The other suspects exhaled, their tension breaking like a snapped string. Poirot turned to Giraud, his voice low. The case is closed, mon ami. But the heart, it remains a labyrinth. As Sophie was led away, the cabaret fell silent, the weight of truth settling over the room. Poirot adjusted his hat, his work done, the tapestry complete. Chapter 8. The curtain falls. The dawn broke over Paris with a tentative glow, as if the city hesitated to face the truths uncovered in the night. The Cézanne shimmered under a sky streaked with rose and gold, its waters carrying away the echoes of Claire Dubois's final moments. Hercule Poirot stood on the Pont Neuf, his gloved hands resting on the parapet, his Homburg hat tilted against the morning breeze. Beside him, Inspector Jean-Paul Giraud smoked a cigarette, the curl of smoke blending with the mist rising from the river. Le Chat Noir, with its revelations and confessions, seemed a world away, yet the weight of the case lingered in the air between them. Another triumph, Poirot, Giraud said, his voice gruff but tinged with admiration. You saw what I missed. Sophie Martin, of all people. A chorus girl, driven to murder by love and fear. It's almost too tragic. Poirot's mustache curved slightly, a rare hint of melancholy in his expression. Tragic, yes, Giraud, but human. The heart, it leads us to strange places. Mademoiselle Martin loved Claire, yet her devotion to Lucien Moreau twisted that love into betrayal. The little gray cells, they see the pattern, but they cannot mend the soul. Giraud flicked his cigarette into the Seine, watching it vanish. Moreau's in custody too, thanks to you. Those letters you found in Sophie's room, they're enough to start unraveling his smuggling ring. He won't slip away this time. Poirot nodded, his eyes tracing the river's flow. And yet, Giraud, it was not Moreau who struck the blow, though his shadow loomed large. The locket, the earring, the wax, they were Sophie's attempt to obscure the truth, to point us toward Vasseur and Lefebvre. But the truth, it always betrays itself in the details. Giraud chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. You and your details, that brass key, the wax on the program. I'd have overlooked them. You're insufferable, Poirot, but I owe you dinner for this. Poirot's smile was faint but genuine. A simple poulet rôti, Giraud, with a glass of good Bordeaux. Hercule Poirot asks no more. He adjusted his gloves, his gaze lifting to the spires of Notre Dame, their silhouettes sharp against the dawn. For now, Paris calls for a walk, not a murder. Let us enjoy her beauty while she permits it. They turned from the bridge, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestones as they strolled toward the Latin Quarter. The city was waking, vendors arranging their stalls, cafe owners sweeping their doorsteps, the air alive with the clatter of morning. Poirot's cane tapped a steady rhythm, a counterpoint to the chaos of the case now resolved. André Vasseur would return to his plays, perhaps chastened, Pierre Lefebvre to his canvases, haunted by a muse forever lost, Madame Renard to her cabaret, its stage dimmer without Claire, and Lucien Moreau, his empire crumbling, would face justice at last. As they passed a flower cart, its blooms vibrant against the gray stone, Poirot paused. The human heart, Giraud, it is like these flowers, beautiful, fragile, and capable of great harm when mishandled. We have solved the crime, but the heart remains a mystery." Giraud shook his head, amused. "Keep your philosophy, Poirot. I'll stick to police work." They parted ways at the corner, Giraud to his office, Poirot to a café where he could sip tisane and reflect. The case of Claire Dubois was closed, its threads woven into a tapestry of motive and betrayal. Yet as Poirot settled at a small table, the morning sun warming his face, he knew Paris held more secrets, waiting for his little gray cells to unravel. For now, though, he would savor the quiet. The city's pulse, a reminder that life, like a good mystery, always moved forward